Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to James Bond Radio, episode number 141, the Timothy Dalton Retrospective, Part 2. Today I'm joined by my brother from another mother, my main man, Mr. Christopher Wright. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing very well, Mr. Thomas Sears. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm still reeling. I'm reeling from this week's news, Chris. Danny Boyle no longer doing Bond 25, obviously. I still don't quite know what to make of it. I don't know where we go from here. I don't know how we solve the situation. I'm happy to step in, but I just want to make it clear that I don't know what I'm doing, so it's probably not the right move. What about you? How are you feeling?
Right. Well, what if I get the phone call instead? Or maybe you could do a dual, directorship. Obviously, you get script writers, script writing team, and you get the odd film that occasionally there's more than one director. I've heard of one Bond film where there was even 5, possibly 6 with one uncredited directors, and we know how good that turned out.
Absolutely.
So Tommy,
we could be like Lord and Miller, couldn't we, with Star Wars Han Solo movie? We could be like that. Get fired halfway through, make it a complete disaster. But there we go. So I tell you what, man. One of the things that came up right after we finished recording, we were obviously. I mean, Facebook has gone ape shit for the last couple of days after the news broke. Everyone's going, "What's going on?" Everybody, big panic. Everybody's weighing in. Some people saying, "Great. I didn't think Danny Boyle was the man for the job anyway." Some people going, "Oh man, I was really looking forward to that." Some people saying, offering up ideas of where we could go from here. And, we even said ourselves, didn't we, in the emergency episode on Tuesday, I think it was, what should we have? Maybe we should get Sam Mendes in, do the Mendes trilogy, go back to the first draft that Purvis and Wade, blah, 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 blah. And then there's a man who's a bit in the know. He's obviously Gareth Owen, Sir Rogers' main man, and obviously he's got an office at Pinewood and stuff, and he's kind of in that world. And he made a post on Facebook, which I thought was very interesting. So should we read it out? Shall I do it?
Yeah, let's have a listen. Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So basically, Gareth said, all these silly Bond rumours going around, and let's face it, some of the ones he's about to mention are what we were talking about the other day. He says, firstly, Sam Mendes will not return. He is in a pre-production on a film that has a December 2019 release date and is therefore busy. He also didn't end on good terms with Eon. Ooh, I sense a little bit of gossip going on
which
there.
is something else we mentioned, wasn't it? Yeah.
Christopher Nolan is in pre-production on his own movie. He would want full creative input as director, writer and producer, and probably sing the theme tune. He'd want to own it. So he's out, which, I'm sure most people are in agreement on that. Martin Campbell is also about to start shooting movie 2, so he's busy. Enough with these daft ideas. Danny Boyle was at Pinewood overseeing set building. So this came out of the blue with no plan B. I think Gareth said it was last Thursday that he was seen at Pinewood. So isn't that recent, man? If he was overseeing set building on Thursday and all of a sudden the news breaks on Tuesday that he's not doing it anymore, it's that recent.
So, he was walking on set. He was in Pinewood looking at these sets being built, man. That's that's quite far into things, isn't it? And then
it really is.
Yeah.
So he says, it was likely an argument over script changes the producers felt were needed. Boyle had complete faith in his writer of choice and refused to have anyone else come in. Yet surely it would only enhance things. But egos can be funny things. There is no one waiting in the wings to take on the Purvis and Wade script. That was effectively first draft before it was shelved. It would need lots of work, and any new director coming in would want to go through that process collaboratively. On the flip side, MGM would be loath to delay the release. Stock price would suffer, and they wouldn't want to write off expenditure as a result of a hiatus. Though if the producers are unhappy with the John Hodge script, they could, as with GoldenEye, use it as a basis for a new script, which would probably keep the story and structure, which they are obviously agreed on, and add a few twists and turns and sharpen up the dialogue. It's a risk to start production without a full script locked, but not unheard of, as with Tomorrow Never Dies. To my thinking, they should resist bringing on board a big-name personality director. Go with a proven working director and surround them with the top team. A PR winner, which would soon dismiss all thoughts about Danny Boyle, which would be... Sorry, I'll start that bit again. A PR winner, which would soon dismiss all thoughts about Danny Boyle, would be to appoint the first female director. It would also set a new, exciting bar for the franchise going forward. Danny Boyle's announcement as director hardly set the world's press on fire, and certainly his departure has claimed more column inches. Time to resolve that and move forward with confidence and a director who fits in with the producers and stars' vision and isn't worried about being a company workhorse. So that's interesting, isn't it? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, there's a few different things. Obviously, Mendes, I knew there were all those rumours about him and Craig not getting on, but obviously Craig is basically part of Eon now. He's not, but you know what I mean in terms of him being a co-producer, and him, Barbara and Michael, like we said before, that they're almost a team at the moment. So, obviously he didn't sort of end on good terms with Eon. So you got to say, well, in that case, obviously, big chance that he won't be in it, won't be directing it rather. But yeah, it's just the fact that it seems it wasn't as if they were sitting around a script meeting, before storyboards, before, set designs or even sets being built. It was quite far into it, which is kind of the crazy thing. So, I mean, yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see. On the case of the female director, I think that's a brilliant idea. In terms of potential female directors, there's got to be more, but the main two that comes to mind are Catherine Bigelow, who's absolutely awesome, and obviously Suzanne Beer. Her name was mentioned. She did The Night Manager, didn't she? And her name was touted about a bit last year. And we know, obviously, Barbara is sort of, I don't know if she's friends with her, but she certainly sort of talks to her. Now, I know this is bad, Tommy, but I don't know. Can you name any other sort of female directors who might be suitable for it? Or
I can barely name any male ones, to be honest, apart from the famous ones. So I'm not the right man to ask. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought. And I think that is the way forward. I mean, not necessarily a female one, but I feel like Gareth said there, going with, a solid director is, I mean, even somebody like Martin Campbell, obviously he's busy, but Martin Campbell isn't one of those kind of household name directors. He is with us for sure. Like, he's an absolute legend. But when you think of like the average person on the street, average moviegoer, somebody like Sam Mendes is a famous face, isn't he, that you would know instantly. Danny Boyle is another one. So I guess the way forward has to be, because it's an odd thing. It's a bit new, this, isn't it? This whole let's use a big name director for Bond. It's not really happened before. It's always been these kinds of like solid directors throughout the whole thing, but they've not been star directors in their own right, where, like a Chris Nolan or a Steven Spielberg or something like that, and it's only been a recent flirtation. And of course, if Mendes didn't end on good terms, and he's obviously going to be one of these fellas that wants a certain amount of control, but it's not his baby, is it? And it's the same thing. I would guess that that's what happened with Danny Boyle here, is that he had a very definite idea, and they were like, no, we don't want you to take Bond in that direction. One of the things I've heard, which actually sort of skipped over me a bit, I don't know whether you picked up on this, but a while ago it was said that Danny Boyle wanted to kind of incorporate the whole #MeToo thing into the next Bond film. And I didn't hear about that. And I've only just, as I've been scooting around today, I saw old Joseph Darlington from Being James Bond posted a YouTube video, and I just had a quick watch. And he was talking about that. And I was like, oh, that tidbit of news missed me. I didn't actually pick up on that. Did you pick up on that? Yeah.
Well, I'd heard it had been mentioned, but I just assumed he just wanted to bring in more proactive female roles. I didn't know.
Yeah, because what he said in that video, he was worried that maybe he wanted to take that a little bit too far and have sort of, the Bond being the kind of the womanizer that he's always been, maybe sort of like put him in his place a little bit with these modern times, which that's not what I want to see from my Bond. Do you know what I mean? I really don't want to see that. So maybe that was some kind of angle. It's because I feel like the idea Boyle had was obviously good enough for them to say, right, let's do it. Sign on the line, green light, let's go. They're building sets, for crying out loud. And I feel like it must be some kind of secondary thing that they've come to loggerheads about there. And obviously Gareth was saying there that it must be an argument over some element in the script. So maybe that was it. Because I feel like that sort of thing doesn't go hand in hand with most people's visions of Bond. I feel like that would be people would look at that as it being sanitized to some level,
Yeah, I guess there are certain ways it could be done right. Equivalent of if you just had a super strong female character who is almost taking Bond for a ride, and he thinks he's the one on top, but actually she is, and that is down. There's been no issue with that whatsoever. I think that would be great.
And to be honest, I feel like they already did that in GoldenEye. When M gives him a dressing down, you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War, gives him a proper telling off. If that's not doing that to some level, and I love that scene, man. That's a great way of doing it. You know what I mean? But totally, what you don't want to do is neuter Bond in any way. Do you know what I mean? He's that symbol of like masculine energy, and I think going too far down that route would be a mistake. But who knows? We might be, barking up the wrong tree with that. But that's an interesting thought, because when I read up on that, I thought that to me doesn't sort of go in the world of Bond as we know it. You know what I mean? So that could quite easily be something I feel like they could have got at loggerheads with a little bit. But yeah, interesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I think. Do you think it's like over the next sort of few days or whatever, we should just get on the old IMDb's, look up potential directors and see what their schedule is like? Obviously, Gareth mentioned a few who are busy. Matthew Vaughan's name didn't come in. Would he be one of those who's too big a name and want creative control? Or would he be one that would be so happy to do it, he'd be like, as long as he could put his little spin on it.
He's a Bond lover, isn't he? He's a Bond lover. So I feel like, it might be, he might be the man for the job, but who knows? But yeah, I mean, when you think of, the Brosnan years, for example, they were all, solid directed. 3 out of 4 were solid directors, and they got the job done without being stars. Like I said, it's throughout the whole history of Bond, it's kind of been that type of guy that they would go for. So maybe it is some dude that is off the radar a bit that we don't perhaps know, because, like I say, it's a new thing having the star director involved. So maybe what Gareth is saying there, his suggestion is to just go with that, like a solid director who's not a big name and is going to get the job done. I think I put my weight behind that, because again, at this stage of the game, what big name star director is going to want to step in and take in when you're already, because I feel like by the sounds of it, if the Purvis and Wade script was only ever a first draft and never got beyond that, then they're going to have to press ahead with the Boyle idea. But I guess, like he says, like they did with GoldenEye, tweak it somewhat so it's not just his idea. And come up with something new. You don't want a rush job like Tomorrow Never Dies or like Quantum, and there is the sort of fear factor that might happen in this situation. Yeah, man, there is that worry, but they're supposed to start in just over 3 months. Can you turn it all around in that time? That is a decent chunk of time to get some stuff done. But I would feel like if Barbara has been on the phone this week,
no doubt she has.
I feel like there needs to have been some meeting, at least over the phone, have happened by now on Friday. That meeting needs to have taken place, and they must have had that sit down where they're like, okay, we've got these 3 dudes that are up for it. Which one are we going to go for? Let's go with person A. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like it needs to be at that level to stick with that release date, man.
Yeah,
I don't want to see it start shooting without a finished script, because I don't think that's ever ended well. Do you know what I mean? It's never gone that well.
How can it? Yeah. How can it?
Yeah.
If you don't know where you're heading, it's like it's going to be a bit of a mess. But I guess Eon, they do know what they're doing. They've been doing it since 62.
Yeah,
it's a case that sometimes shit hits a fan, and you just got to deal with it, and that's the sort of situation now. It's not going to, although it might add a delay to it, it's not going to stop Bond being made. We're still going to get a Bond, and it's just about them sort of putting all the pieces together, which obviously they will, and we just got to find out what those pieces are over the next sort of few weeks or months, maybe. But yeah,
all right, cool. Okay, so should we talk about Timothy Dalton and his best bits?
I think we should.
Let's do it, man. So last time, obviously, we were discussing some of Timmy's greatest moments, and we're going to continue that discussion today. We've got lots to talk about. It's going to be a lot of fun to put Timmy to bed, wrap him up, put him away, put him in a drawer, and be like, thank you for your time, Timmy. It was wonderful. Well, let's move on to the Pierce era, which is going to be fascinating when we get through it. So before we crack on, come and join us on all the social medias. Come and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Come to the website, jamesbondradio.com. There's a donate link over there, which is all very nice if you want to send us some money to help keep the podcast on the road. That's lovely, really nice, never expected, but always appreciated. You can leave us a speak pipe message, otherwise known as a voicemail, over on the website. There's a little floating bar thingy on the far right that says send voicemail. You can click that whether you're on your phone or whether you're on your laptop or whatever it is, and you can send us a message right through your computer. So if you've got some trivia questions or just want to say hello or whatever, leave us a voicemail through there, or a quote, absolutely. Have I done it all? I think that's it. Oh, yeah. I think so. Leave us a review on iTunes, because that helps us rank higher and attract more listeners. Even if you don't listen to us on iTunes, please leave a review anyway, because that is really nice and helpful for us.
Nice.
You weren't expecting me to end there. You were going to go for a very long sip of that purple drink you've got going on there.
I was. I'll hang tough on that for now.
All right.
Okay, so should we listen to a bit of theme tune so I can have a drink and then come back after that?
I tell you what, I would love to listen to a bit of theme tune, but before we do that, we've got a listener trivia question, haven't we?
We have. Now, this one is from Mr. Jeff Pollock. So should we have a listen to this week's Bond trivia?
Do it, Mr. Pollock.
Hey guys, it's your brother from Langley, Jeff Pollock, calling in from Florida. It's been a long time. I hope you both are doing well. I got a trivia question that's not too hard, but it definitely takes a little bit of thought. But before I get to that, I just got to tell you, this Spy Who Loved Me novelization is remarkable. It's awesome. And also the work, Tom, that you've been doing with John Williams lately on the music of Bond has been ridiculously good. I had no idea that Live and Let Die soundtrack was that good. Seen the movie a million times, but listening to it isolated, man, I'm playing that over and over again. All right, so the question, pretty simple. 24 illustrious movies. In only 7, the name of the movie has not been spoken in dialogue. What are those 7 movies? Stay well, guys. Can't wait to get you guys back on the air together. Hope you're all doing well. See you later.
There we have it.
Very nice. Thank you for your kind words, Mr. Pollock. Lovely to know you've been enjoying all the stuff. That obviously came in a little while ago while you were on your hiatus by the sounds of things, Chris.
It was indeed, yeah. We had a bit of a backlog of trivia questions and quotes, so I've been filtering through them all, and yeah, that one obviously came a little while ago, but a good, really solid question.
Do you know what that is? That's what I call a Chris Wright. This is difficult for me to say. A Chris Wright Christmas quiz question. Good God, that is a very challenging sentence to say. Which 7 things for 1 point? But yeah, good stuff. I can think of one already. One.
Cool.
I know the Brozza liked to knock out his film title, didn't he?
Yeah, he certainly did.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff.
Cool.
Excellent work, Jeff. We will obviously explore that a little later on in today's episode and get our thinking caps on, and we'll find out the answer later. So let's get cracking.
My name's Bond. James Bond. Bond. James. Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy. As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
All right, so here we are. We're going to start off with the best Timmy D action scenes. Now, There are a lot of these, I would say, for an actor who obviously took it back to the books and went hardcore. There, you would imagine that there would be less of a focus on the action, more on the character and all that kind of stuff. And of course, you do get that, but you also get some really top-notch action stuff as well. So where are we kicking off? Where's the first one? What are we talking about?
It's got to be with the best pre-title sequence of the series. Oh my goodness gracious. Which is obviously the Living Daylights. Now, the action here is brilliant. Obviously, we've got the 3 double O's, skydiving out of the aeroplane. You've got the brilliant music. Landing on Gibraltar, then you've got the death of 004 is so good, isn't it? Where the rope gets cut, he hears a scream. We see Bond sort of whip around. We see Tim for the first time, and then we get the chase scene. So he sort of realizes that one of the SAS is sort of obviously infiltrator, and chases after the Jeep, jumps on the back of the Jeep. Now, you mentioned about Tim with the action scenes. Now, he didn't do the skydive, and a few other things, and he didn't do all of the Land Rover stuff, but he did do a fair bit. When I was speaking to Paul Weston, he definitely said that Tim was really up for doing as many stunts as they'd let him do, which is obviously great to hear, and you can really see that when he's sort of hanging on to the Jeep for some of the close-ups and stuff. But absolutely cracking scene. Obviously, I love the way he gets the knife, cuts into the sort of canvas roof. You see him go in, and then he sort of headbutts the guy. Classic Tim headbutt there.
The Tim headbutt, man, I do enjoy that concept. That's a nice little signature move. If Roger's got the, jump up hold onto a pipe and do the double kick, Timmy has got his headbutt, which I thoroughly enjoy. Yeah, man, as we've often said, that pre-title sequence is probably the best one in the whole series. I struggle to think of one that beats it convincingly anyway, and what a way to introduce a new Bond. What a way to introduce a new Bond. When you look at Sir Roger and A View to a Kill, God bless him, and obviously that was the end of that journey, and that was the right time to call it a day. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got the new dude in, freshen things up. It's much like in Majesties as well, as when you've got George on that beach at the beginning, looking really solid, man. He looks amazing in that sequence, and it was just the freshening up you needed. And you compare that to the Shaun of Diamonds, for example, obviously that came later, and it's chalk and cheese. And I feel like you get the same thing with Tim versus Roger in this one. It's like, your young lithe Bond is back, and to see him doing as much of the stunt work as he was allowed to do is a nice thing. And you just don't get any better than that. It fits all the key Bond elements in one action sequence. You got a bit of sneaky Bond there, you got some balls out action, you've got an amazing stunt, and you've got Lover Man Bond on the boat at the end. I feel like you just couldn't do it any better if you tried.
No, not at all. And what you need, like with good action scenes, obviously you need to have people on the edge of the seats, which you get with this, but you need a payoff at the end.
Yeah.
And with this one, you've obviously got the Land Rover, like basically driving off the cliff. And I love the way he kicks the window to create the air so he can then get his parachute, and he just drops out of the back of the Jeep as it sort of crashes down. That is such a cool payoff, obviously then with a boat.
I love the way his parachute's just a little bit on fire as well. Yeah. It's a lovely little touch, man. That's a really nice touch.
Yeah. Everyone else would be like bricking it, but he's all right. He can still control it even if it's on fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And the timing. If only I could find the real man. There he is, landing on the roof. Love it. Brilliant stuff. Now, next up, right?
Yes.
Aston Martin chase. Now, we talked a little bit about this when we did the Living Daylights review episode, obviously. Now, what do you think, right? Because you've got your hardcore, cold-blooded Ian Fleming, and this could be more of your movie Bond, couldn't it? You know what I mean? You've got a laser coming out of the end of your wheel, chopping the police cars in half. You've got that old school movie chase thing where the hero's car is in charge, basically. He does all the cool stuff, and all the police or whoever are following him behind, they're like calamitous buffoonery. Do you know what I mean? It's like if he does a cool jump, they try the jump and they fail. If he skids past the river, they go into the river and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that going on. The way he cuts the ice in a big circle.
That's really cool.
They're sinking down and all that kind of stuff. It's almost like it's kind of one step away from a Roger chase, I would say, without the eyebrows, obviously.
You could picture Roger in that car with a lot of that stuff going on, can't you?
You certainly
in
could.
that particular bit, on the lake and everything.
When Roger would speed past some cyclists, or Pierce in GoldenEye, speed past some cyclists, and then they all fall over like dominoes. You know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? So what do you think about that? Do you think that was pushing Timmy's Bond too far in the other direction, or do you think that was just right to make it Bondy, because it might not have been Bondy enough?
I think for Daylights, I think it works. I think if that scene was in License to Kill, it wouldn't have worked, because the majority of License to Kill is so much darker. You think of the tanker chase and everything. I think with Daylights it works, and I really like this whole scene from the sort of, they get the police band saying that they're after them. The two missiles that explode the truck is just brilliant. It's so good. Obviously, you mentioned the lasers, and then you get that whole bit where he drives into the shed and across, and they sort of burst out the other side just as it explodes. And then, obviously the tire comes off, and he creates that little sort of cut in the ice. And then you get the skis, the studded tires, and the rocket booster. And I just remember watching that when I was young, going, "Man, this car is wicked." And I still think that now, man. I still think it now. So I think in Daylights, I think it works really well. And obviously it then leads from that into the cello chase, which you're never ever going to see. Like, that is so original. Like, no other film could ever come up with a cello chase. You've got on the cello case going down some, snowy mountain with an army after you. That is classic Bond. You don't get that anywhere else. And I think that linked in with the Aston Martin, that whole scene is just magic. It really is for me.
I think there's a balance, isn't there? Because I think where License to Kill maybe turned a lot of people off is the fact that it is so dark, and it obviously there's the feel of it is very different, like we discussed recently as well. But there were some people that phoned in with their 90-second reviews saying it just didn't quite feel Bondy enough. And I feel like there is that risk of going too far down that route where you don't have enough of these kinds of things to make it feel like the movie Bond. Because the book Bond and the movie Bond are completely separate beasts, aren't they? They are different animals. And yeah, so I do think, especially when you have a Bond like a Timothy or even a Daniel, there is definitely a little bit of a tightrope walk you have to do of like, okay, we need to make this, we need to sort of bring it back to basics. We need to make it dark and gritty, but at the same time, we still need those familiar things that make Bond Bond, and obviously this is a throwback to like an updated Goldfinger, isn't it? With the what do you even call those things that come out of the wheels in Goldfinger? Like the little weird little...
Well, the tyre slashers.
Yeah, little blender type things, like the bottom of a blender.
Blenders.
They just blend out the wheels.
Aston Martin blenders.
but so it's like an updated version of that with lasers, isn't it? So it's, it's a nice little callback to an earlier time, updated for the 80s. Yeah. Absolutely. Cool
and you
stuff.
get a few one-liners off Tim there, which I think he does well with, which again, I don't think would really work in License to Kill, perhaps, or maybe not as well.
He's so angry in License to Kill, isn't he? Yeah. He's not going to be throwing out quips because he's pissed off, and he's got the in License to Kill. Whereas this time around, he's got a few optional extras installed. It's amazing, this Bond safety glass, all that. I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so on to the next sort of action set piece then. We've got the rooftop chase through Tangier. So basically this is just after he shoots Pushkin and the whole fake assassination, and he's legging it. He's got the police after him. He's running through all the rooftops. Basically a bit of an early version of parkour. There's that brilliant bit where he uses the sort of antenna to sort of, lower, spring onto the other roof type thing. Obviously this is minus the magic carpet part. And it's not a huge scene, but I think it's still a worthy mention. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I do like a rooftop chase, and I feel like you mentioned the old magic carpet thing there. For anybody who doesn't know, which is probably not many people listen to this, but there was that whole thing, putting a rug across some telephone lines or electricity wires or something, and then like sliding down it, using it as a slide. Some dude sees it from the ground and it looks like he's on a magic carpet. That's Roger territory, isn't it? And I feel like this is another one of those that kind of skirts along that periphery itself, in the sense, like that thing you mentioned with the aerial. He uses it to kind of get across to the next roof, then he turns around and lets it go, and it hits the dudes in the face and all that kind of stuff. That's that same sort of buffoonery from the pursuers that you get. It's like Smokey and the Bandit, isn't it? Have you ever watched one of those recently, where it's like he's just cruising along, and then everybody else is just an absolute abomination behind him? It's that similar thing. So yeah, it is a bit slapstick but again, I think it definitely works, and it feels right for me, that rooftop chase.
And I tell you what I like as well, when in Bond sort of chases or action scenes, is when the general public are somehow there to experience it or be involved, not firsthand obviously, but for instance, you've got they've put their washing out, and Bond's sort of going through it, and they're a bit upset because he's taking his washing down, and they're just enjoying their ordinary day, and Bond's going through it, a bit like Quantum in the foot chase there, where there's that old woman and she's sort of wheeling up that little basket that suddenly drops down. And I kind of like that, when you just get the sort of general public affected by whatever the action scene is doing, and I think it works quite well in this scene as well, with all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
man, absolutely. I think there's a definite feel involved in a Bond related chase. There's definitely like things that you run past, and there's, I don't know, somebody just, you tip over a market stall and all the oranges go everywhere. Do you know what I mean? That's like your typical kind of chase sequence. But it's nice. I like it.
I always thought of one. I hope it was slightly off topic, but I always thought it would be really cool if there was like sort of an airport scene. I guess we've had quite a few with Casino and stuff like that, where basically Bond gets away and he ends up on one of those baggage conveyor belts. So as everyone's waiting for the baggage, he just comes up out of it, sort of dusts himself down and walks off. And I think that would be a really nice Bond moment.
Yeah, that is nice.
Hopefully, they'll do something like that at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to the next one. Jail prison fight. So this one is pretty hard hitting, isn't it? So this is where obviously Bond and Kara, they're on the Russian airbase. And they've got the sort of Scouser jailer who doesn't sound very Russian at all, does he?
I didn't say you could get up. I didn't say you could get down. Yeah, that dude. Yeah, it's a nice fight. This I find I do like. He does a bit of Roger Moore jump up, hold on, double kick, doesn't he? In this,
he does actually in this one. Nice. You're right. Yeah,
yeah. I do enjoy this fight. It's not like a. There's another fight we will get onto in a bit in this film, which I think is up there with the best of them. But I like that there's like a slight comedic element in there as well. I love a bit of Cameron Shah at the end. It's really nice. He gives him the finger, doesn't he, when it all goes wrong for him and stuff. Good. It's a nice. I feel like this is an honourable mention fight. I feel like it's because it's not like a main set piece. It flies under the radar a little bit, but I like the fact that you've got the blend of Bond with his little whistly key ring, you know, the stun gas. And I like the fact that Bond is a little bit encumbered as well. You know, it's kind of like it's not like a straight fight. He's still handcuffed. There's that thing with the spike and stuff. You know, it's a nice little fight.
And it's also, I think Q says that most normal people are incapacitated for whatever it is, 30 seconds or something like that. But obviously after like 5-6 seconds, the jailer gets up because he's not normal and he's really angry. But what's also nice is Cara Malovi, she actually gets involved. She got that bit where she takes off the guy's helmet and uses a bucket and whacks him. And that's always good as well.
That's a nice little touch.
Cool.
Do you know what? I feel like in earlier times, that jailer would have been played by somebody who was almost like a little bit cartoonish. Do you know what I mean? He'd have been 8 feet tall. He'd have probably had blonde hair and like some sort of turtleneck on. Do you know what I mean? I feel like he could have been a stamper for his times. But I guess they were playing that down a little bit, but nicely done.
They already had Necros, I suppose. Yeah,
I suppose they did. Yeah. Speaking of which, we've got Bond and Necros having a fight on the back of the cargo plane. Now, talk to me about that. What do you think?
Okay, so I mean, this visually is one of the best things in, I'd say, pretty much the whole series. If you're thinking about, you know, there are people there for real, no CGI, no wires, and like when you see that bag of sort of the opium just going up and down like crazy, and they're so close to hitting their heads, and they're obviously having to navigate around. And I think it's a really good fight. So we've throughout the film, we've seen how Necros, you know, the exploding milk bottles, are strangling with his Walkman, all that. He's a deadly assassin, this guy. And he first gets that cargo net and tries to sort of over Bond's face, and it's all cutting into him, and he's trying to like strangle him and stuff. And you know it's going to be a tough fight. And then when it ends up sort of outside the back of the airplane, it just steps up another level, doesn't it? It really does.
Well, you've got several things you've got to worry about in a situation like that. Number one, falling off, right? That's foremost in your mind. But number two, with how sort of turbulent that big net is.
Once they cut it, especially.
Yeah. It's once that you've got all those sort of like packages flying in your face. You've got the fact that as it's kind of moving up and down, you might twat yourself on the underside of the tailpiece. And then after he dispatches Necros as well, there's that bit where he's trying to get on the back of the plane, and he's like narrowly missing. It's like you could quite easily crack your head open on the little landing platform. You know, there's a lot going on there. And to film a sequence like that, can you imagine the level of work that must have gone into something like that?
And it was shot so well. Like that bit you mentioned where he has to get back in. You can feel it, can't you, in terms of the difficulty in having to get, only just making it as well. Yeah. And sort of the hard impact as well. So for me, standout action scene, that one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Good stuff. And then I guess you can't not mention the showdown at the end between Bond and Whittaker. Now, what do you think about this? Because what's often the thought about The Living Daylights is you don't have that centerpiece bad dude, do you? You don't have a Dr. No or a Goldfinger or a Le Chiffre or whatever. You've got these two dudes who are kind of working together, obviously Whittaker and Koskov. And I suppose Whittaker is more the sort of end-level boss baddie because they have a showdown, and you never get a showdown with Koskov. So, but he's a little bit sort of, he's got a bit of a buffoonish edge to him in his own way.
Boys with toys.
Yeah, but I do really like that whole angle of him studying old school battles and stuff, and you know, he's got all those little sort of war games that he plays with himself and all that kind of stuff. That feels like a Fleming thing to me. That feels like something a Fleming character would have done.
And someone that's got statues of sort of warmongers, but with his face imposed. You could imagine that in a Fleming novel as well.
You could, yeah, absolutely. I feel like Whittaker is somebody who was I feel like maybe they should have gone a bit darker with Whittaker, and I feel like Joe Don Baker's just a bit too jovial and friendly looking. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I could see him. I feel like he is Jack Wade, and I felt like that about him before
exactly,
Jack Wade was even a thing. He's that sort of like Hawaiian shirt wearing. I could see him at a barbecue, holding, drinking his bottle of beer, talking about his lawn, and talking about the game. Do you know what I mean? I feel like that's who he is, and he doesn't strike me as like a ruthless, drug dealing, diamond smuggling kind of bad boy. So I feel like if we'd have had somebody who was more sort of, I could almost see, Georgi, the actor, being more along those lines. Can you imagine him being more of like a sullen Hugo Drax type who was all about military order and wasn't that sort of like friendly clap on the back kind of thing, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think what we're trying to say is, in this particular scene, there's not a huge amount. It's not very tense, is it? It's almost like it is interesting, and that part where Bond sort of unloads his Walther and it's hitting the body armor, and then suddenly, I think it's more fascinating than like, oh crap, Bond's about to die or whatever. It's more like, whoa, when he with that gun, just a rapid fire is like crazy, isn't it? The bullets going and like shattering glass and everything. I think the end is brilliant. I love the whole thing of, the Boston Wellington sort of going on him and all that sort of stuff. I think that's really, really cool. But it's not, it's not, if you compare it to sort of other showdowns with major villains like Scaramanga or something like that, it's definitely not sort of up to that level, is it?
I think the thing with it is that I do really like the scene, like that moment when because he's got that cool gun with the shield on the front, hasn't he? And he's like, you've had your 8, now have my 80. And then you see Bond's just kind of like trying to deal with it in the background and like just run from bit to bit. I like that. I feel like Bond's under pressure there. I just don't find Whittaker that much of a threat. Do you know what I mean? I feel like he's too friendly. And I feel like if we'd have had a few scenes where he was just really sullen, more of a Hugo Drax, all about military order and just really going deep on that, never shows any emotion, that kind of dude, I feel like there'd have been more of a threat there, because it's that thing, he's even sort of giggling as he's walking around with his gun, isn't he? And it just, I don't know, it takes away a bit of the threat for me there. I guess they were going for he's just a lunatic, but it takes a bit of the danger out of it for me, that one.
That little cannon thing is quite cool though, the little miniature cannon that fires an actual cannonball or whatever it is. So I guess they were the main sort of action scenes that Bond himself was involved in, but there were a couple which we definitely have to mention, honourable mentions. Now, obviously you've got the big climatic battle between Kamran Shah and his men against the Russians, lots of tanks and firing and horses and the digger and everything like that, which is great. But I think the one which we definitely have to mention, which I'm sure was the one you were referring to earlier, was Necros versus Green 4 in the kitchen in the Blade and Safe House. Now Bond has already left by this point, but this scene is looks really realistic. It's done incredibly well. It's not just some chump who gets one hit and he's knocked out. This guy Green 4, he knows what he's about. He's fully trained as well, and it could have gone either way to a certain extent. You get the boiling water, you get that sort of the hot cooker,
the grill kind of thing.
Hob. You get the grill, you get this sort of electric knife thing, the kitchen knife sort of thing, and it's just brilliant. I mean, for me, it's definitely one of the best fights. It probably in the series as well.
Yeah, no. When I look at this, I think it has to be the best fight in the series that doesn't feature Bond. I can't think of another one. One doesn't come to mind at the moment, anyway, unless there is one, and all the listeners are screaming at me now. But it's one of those in a similar vein to the Red Grant fight in From Russia with Love, and how groundbreaking that was, of how frantic that was in close quarters. This is very much the same, but there's a lot more going on in this one. Like you say, they're grabbing the saucepan of boiling water, he ducks, narrowly misses it, the electric bread knife, the grill, like burning his face up and stuff. And it's so like to the second timed perfectly. You imagine rehearsing a fight like that. When you watch them going at it with each other, it's kind of like, damn, dude, I don't even feel, sometimes you look at a movie and you can tell it's rehearsed and, now he's going to throw the left and he dodges. This, I feel like they were actually having a fight with each other. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's that frantic. So yeah, man, it's got to be up there as a top, I'd say a top 5 fight in the whole series, I reckon, this one.
Yeah. It's a blinder, absolutely. And I think the editing really helps in that as well, isn't it? The editing is just so on point. No frame wasted. Sort of thing,
you see everything as well, which is nice. Like I know a lot of the time these days they do creative editing to get around the censors, so you don't see a certain number of punches connect. None of that with this. Like this was like proper filmmaking of like you see everything on screen that's happening there, which is nice. Now, Chris, before we move on to our next little segment and talk about the License to Kill action sequences, I'm going to make you choose your favorite Living Daylights action sequence.
Okay, with Bond, yeah. Favorite one with Bond.
It doesn't have to be with Bond. It's just as long as it's in the film. What are you thinking?
Oh man, that is tough. Well, I know that it's going to be between the pre-title. I think the pre-titles, if you're including the parachute as well as the Jeep, as well as everything like that, then that will probably take the biscuit. But I think the Necros and Green 4 will be right behind it. And obviously the airplane one as well. Oh man, this is tricky. Okay. For a single actions, I think it's got to be the pre-title seat.
I'm in full agreement. Those three are the standout moments, I think, in terms of action sequences. I suppose the Green 4 fight, as amazing as it is, it's not a major feature of the film. And that pre-title sequence is so perfect. I feel like it's just, it's got to go with the pre-title sequence, I think, for me as well. Yeah, nicely done.
Sweet. Okay.
So let's move on to Timmy's swan song then. Action sequences from A License to Kill. Give it to me. What you got up first?
Okay, so speaking about pre-titles, we've got the License to Kill part where basically Bond goes fishing for Sanchez and he's hanging off the helicopter, gets that cable obviously around the tail of the plane and hauls him in. You've got all the sort of gun and shootout before that as well. So it's kind of like a few different things, isn't it, rather than one sort of solid action scene. But so what did you think of that? I think the actual sort of getting the aeroplane and stuff was a really good idea.
Yeah, man. Like we said, Christopher Nolan's obviously a fan. He nicked it for Dark Knight Rises, didn't he? It's one of those striking things. Like you were saying earlier about there are certain things that you just wouldn't get in any film that's not a Bond, like your cello chase, the gadget-laden car chases and all that kind of stuff. I feel like this is the sort of sequence, up until obviously they made Dark Knight Rises, that you wouldn't get in another film. The concept of sort of like, what I don't even know what you would call that, dangling from a helicopter on a cable, holding onto the back of a plane, tying the cable around the back of the plane, and then having the chopper take the slack of the plane. I mean, I don't even know how you would dream up a sequence like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, how do you put those things together in your mind? You would just think, okay, let's do a plane chase or a helicopter chase or something. But it's one of those things that's different enough that makes you go, whoa, when you see something like that on screen, especially back in the 80s as well. Like, you just wouldn't have seen that kind of thing, which I think is a really nice touch. And that is, as we will be talking about with our Mission Impossible versus Bond episode that's coming up, I think it's one of those things that Bond really always needs to lead the way with action set pieces like this. We can't let anybody else take over. We've got to have Bond leading the way. And I feel like that sequence was, especially for those times, would have been a first class opening sequence.
Definitely. And like I mentioned before, you need a payoff, and you get the payoff where they both parachute down into the wedding. And you need that. You can't just have the bit of action and then without the payoff. You need that little bit of class at the end of it, like the start of Living Daylights, and you get that here as well. So really, really good scene, that one.
Absolutely.
So on to the next one then. So this one is brilliant. So basically, this is Bond. It's after he sort of sneaks onto the wave crest. Obviously, we like that bit, but this is a part where Sharky's been killed. He shoots, is it Clive, I think, and then goes underwater. He's being chased by all these divers, and basically ends up barefoot water skiing behind the plane, clambers onto the plane, chucks, opens the door, that emergency door, so one flies out, battles the other guy, and then there's that bit which is so cool where he just like flies. He's seen all the money. He flies a plane past a wave crest, and you just hear this, and you see this guy just drop out of the plane. This scene is superb, mate. Superb.
Well, I tell you what, I'm reeling at the fact that you knew that dude's name was Clive, of all things.
I think it is.
That is a beautiful thing. I just love the fact that we now have a Bond henchman whose name is Clive. You know what I mean? It's like the most nondescript name ever. But no, even if you are, I'm sticking with it. That dude is Clive as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, man.
Or it's either him or the guy that he speaks to is Clive, maybe. The guy in the boat, one of them.
As long as there's a Clive involved, I'm happy. Yeah. It's nice. Clive in a Bond film. Yeah, man, I think this is another one. It's another one of those that ticks off the list. Okay, this is a Bond film. We've got to do something a bit different. And like I've said before, man, when I was watching the teaser material back in 89, before they released this film, they would do a little teaser on the news or whatever it was you were watching, where you would see the bit where he would catch on with the harpoon and he would be dragged into the water. And the moment he connected with the surface, camera's still underwater, they would cut and say, well, if you want to see what happens next, you're going to have to go and watch the film. Which I would love it if they still did things like that instead of just giving everything away in the fucking trailer. Anyway, that was a side note. Yeah, you don't expect that, do you? You're like, okay, what can Bond do here that's truly spectacular that isn't just another run-of-the-mill thing? And there it is, water skiing barefoot behind a plane from a harpoon, Bond music playing. What do you think?
Yeah. And also it's the way that he gets onto the plane and he's hanging off this sort of skid on the plane. Yeah. And that's a brilliant stunt as well, you know, as this is taken off. And then there's a bit where the pilot notices him and sort of shifts it one way and shifts it the other. And you can see he's hanging on underneath, like barely hanging on, you know. He's been, I mean, that is an absolutely brilliant stunt, and then climbs in the other side into the plane. So you've got like some absolutely top-notch action here. And then, like I said before, you got that brilliant payoff at the end where he chucks the guy out. And yeah, for me, one of the highlights of the film, this one.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Definitely. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Next up, we have, I know, good old JW, Music of Bonds, John Williams is going to be happy with the soundtrack for this bit. We've got a little bit of Dirty Love, Barrelhead Bar Brawl. Talk to me about this. How do you feel about this one?
Okay, so conversely to what we've been saying about the previous two scenes, where you got the helicopter getting Bond getting the plane, you've got Bond barefoot water skiing, classic Bond ideas. You know, they are so Bondian. This barroom brawl, I think you could see that in any number of films, really, couldn't you? Yeah. There's a couple of little things. There's that marlin sort of swordfish that the guy uses and what have you, but really, there isn't any sort of new sort of Bond flavour sort of style to the action, I don't think.
This is what I would call a very sort of typical 80s barroom brawl. It's Roadhouse, isn't it? I could see Patrick Swayze in his mullet doing some roundhouse kicks in this. It's very... I feel like those brawls always happen in a pub that's got wood on the walls. You know what I mean? Yeah. If it's one of those sort of
helps.
That's just where those fights happen. If you ever go in a place like that, you know there's a potential that a fight could kick off. So on the other side of the coin, you've got the two sequences we were just talking about, which are very like, whoa, set the bar, Bondian, raising the game a bit. And this one is just your typical fight sequence, I guess. But that's not...
Still entertaining,
it's not like that's a bad thing. You know, like a lot of people said with Spectre, the car chase wasn't that good. It wasn't as good as the Quantum one. And it's like, but that wasn't trying to do the same job. The Quantum car chase is amazing. It's a super frantic, kick-ass sequence that kicks off the whole film. Whereas the one in Spectre was more, okay, we've got to expand on the actual plot there. There's the Call with Moneypenny going on. It had a totally different function. I feel like you couldn't have a frantic car chase like that, like the one in Quantum, at the same time as Bond is on the phone to Moneypenny. It would just be a bit too much, I think. I feel like you almost had to keep it a little bit on the down low to further the plot during that sequence. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's not a bad thing. You can't have every sequence in a film be this absolutely groundbreaking masterpiece of moments. You know what I mean? Oh, stop it.
Okay.
All right, Mission Impossible 6.
Yes.
But, all right, you can. Fuck. Go on, carry on.
Okay, so moving on to the next action scene that we've got. Now, this one is quite cool. It's not a long one, but I think it works really well. This is the ninja attack. Okay. So you've got the whole build-up. So you've got Bond, previously we've seen him look out the window, lovely view and all that. Now he's in that building opposite. I like the way in Daylights, we see him with a proper big rifle, sniper, at his job. And again, we get to see him sort of setting up the guns, setting up the sort of camera gun. he's got his sort of place. He knows exactly where he wants to be. He's got his sort of little detonator button for the Dentonite toothpaste and all that, and it works really well. And then obviously he gets the ninjas attack just as he's about to shoot. And now this is probably, I don't know if it's the first time, maybe it is the first time that you ever see Bond completely and utterly outclassed in a fight. Like he's got no chance, absolutely no chance. He tries, I don't even know if he gets a hit in, does he? I know they sort of flip round and kick him. They throw a net on him. They get their gun and smash it against his face. And he's just out of it, man. Like no chance.
Yeah.
And that's kind of nice to see for something different, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a similar thing to like the fight in Spectre where you see Daniel get his ass kicked and there's that moment, isn't there, where he literally is just totally ruined and just collapses on the floor. And it's nice to see Bond go up against somebody that he is totally outclassed by, because there's an element of realness in there. You know what I mean? That he's not going to be this He-Man that can just dispatch whoever he wants. You turn that on its head and you look at the lift sequence in Quantum where he's surrounded by goons and all of a sudden the lift opens up and they're just all out for the count on the floor, which is kind of cool in its own way, but it's a little bit sort of like, it's a bit Arnold Schwarzenegger, isn't it, rather than Bond, that kind of thing. Whereas, it's Bond is totally buggered up here. And even like in the sequence where Hela comes along and they're in that sort of little house and he's being interrogated, the explosion goes off and that huge beam comes over that just protects Bond and stuff. Bond is completely fucked on that little table. You know what I mean? There's no escaping for him. If it wasn't for Hela coming along, that would have been game over for Bond, I think. So it's nice to, in a film like this where they go dark, it's nice to see Bond push to his limits, which until this point, you never saw Bond push this far ever. And obviously, we'll talk about like the climax in a bit as well, when he faces off with Sanchez. You've never seen Bond bleed, really, only in minor ways previously, but like you see him proper messed up here, don't you?
That bit where Sanchez just like, turns his face and all the side of his head is all just like bloodied, and it just doesn't look great, which is, like we said, that is a good thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, a little bit of, not really an action scene, but there's a little bit of action when we go to the Olympitech Center. So this is basically Dario's got his gun on Bond. Sanchez sort of realizes, again, that they have a little brawl, get a bit of a headbutt in, and Bond basically ends up on the conveyor belt. Now, this is a pretty deadly situation, isn't it? So he's sort of holding on as Sanchez kicks his hand, and basically he ends up hanging off over that sort of cocaine grinder thing by his wrist, and Dario sort of there with a knife. I mean, that's a pretty hardcore sort of, you don't want to be in that situation too often, do you?
No, that is true. And I think that's another moment where Bond would have absolutely been verschnickered until obviously Pam comes along and saves the day. Yeah, that's another one of those things. Like my old man has an obsession with power tools, right? Every time I go and visit my old man, he's chopping something up with some sort of drill. Not that you chop things up with drills, but there's my experience in the world of power tools. He's chopping something up with a saw or drilling something or whatever. And there's something about those things that, could take your finger off in the blink of an eye that just give me the heebie-jeebies. Do you know what I mean? I just don't want to be anywhere near those things. And that mincer underneath Tim is one of those things. If I was in the room with that device and it was going round and round like that, grinding up all that stuff, I wouldn't even want to set foot anywhere near it, let alone hang off it just by a little bit of cord around my wrist. That's not a nice way to go at all. There's a real sense of strife and danger and peril there, which I think is nice. And as Dario is like slicing through the cord as well, it's just nasty, man, and it's a horrible way to go. I would say there's one thing it's missing, which is obviously when Dario goes into the grinder, we could have had a retread of, he had a lot of guts.
Oh, yeah.
We could have had that. I would have enjoyed that. That'd have been a nice little
Yeah.
throwback, especially because we had the callback to Majesties earlier on in the film.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it wasn't the time, I guess.
No.
But yeah, I suppose what's added to that is Dario is such a nasty little bastard as well. He's like spitting on him and stuff, and he's just such a nasty little geezer that it adds a notch or two. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just that's the scene where you're sitting on the edge of the seat. That's your Goldfinger laser table scene, isn't it? Where you're like, oh man, in the slightest second Bond could die sort of thing. And you need at least one of those in every Bond film, maybe even a couple. And that's clearly the one for, at least one of the ones for License to Kill. Now, going on to the final sort of action scene, this is absolutely superb. We're obviously talking about the tanker chase in License to Kill. Now, what are your thoughts on this one, Tom?
This one is an interesting one, right? Because ultimately, you've got a stunt like when it goes up on the two wheels, which is, obviously
amazing.
You've seen that on some level in Diamonds Are Forever, but to see it done on a vehicle like that is a whole different ball game, isn't it? You've kind of seen the car go up on two wheels before, but you've not really seen a tanker do the same thing. So that's a nice little thing of raising the game a little bit. It's one of those things that's really frantic, isn't it? Like that whole sequence of him sort of like hanging onto the back of it, climbing over the top. There's, Sanchez with his Uzi, and, finally when they kind of have their face off bit, you got Sanchez running around with his machete and stuff. Like that's a real frantic sequence, and it is, you feel how deadly and perilous that situation is. I think it's a belter, man. What are your thoughts?
Oh, totally. And like it starts off, obviously, Bond doing the stunt where he's going from the plane on top of the tanker roof. You've got the bit where the two tankers, Bond crushes the other one into the rock, and then the Stinger missile blows it up, which is brilliant. You've then got the part where he sort of unlatches, the container for one of his tankers, and it goes down and explodes another one. You've got the bit where, the top of the sort of cabin comes up as he goes through the fire, which is like, a really nice little moment as well. And then you get the crazy bit where obviously him and Sanchez are fighting on the back, and like you said, with the machete, and it ends up with the tanker basically obviously tipping over. We see Bond probably looking in the most deadliest situation he's ever been in, sort of thing. Man. Yeah. And completely beaten. And that whole set piece is just, I think for me, it is the highlight of the film. Definitely.
It is a beauty for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Good stuff. So, Chris, then I'm going to make you choose. What do you think is the greatest, or I should say your favorite, License to Kill kind of action sequence? I think you might have just answered that, actually.
Well, I think I have, actually. Yeah, I think the whole wave crest escape and the plane and the water skiing is absolutely brilliant. But I think the tanker chase, you can't beat it. And you get the Bond theme ricocheting off the metal and all that sort of stuff as well.
Ding,
the explosions and everything, like crazy-ass big explosions. For me, I think, without a doubt, actually.
That's a solid choice. I think above all, that tanker going up on two wheels is such an achievement.
Well, a bit more than two wheels on one side.
Of course it is, yeah. I don't know how else to describe it, really. But yeah, that's such an achievement, in the world of driving and stunts and stuff. That definitely is up there. I think for me, my favourite would go with the whole barefoot water ski and escape sequence, because that's just such a cool thing. And like you say, I do love the dude who you see him at a distance falling out the door. And then he goes into the water, That's a great moment for me. Love that one. All right.
Lovely.
What have we got next then? We have got the coolest Timmy D moments. All right. Yes. So this is going to encapsulate several different arenas, I would say. So lay it on me. What's the first one?
Okay. So obviously Living Daylights to start with. It's only a few minutes after the film opens out, and it is seeing Bond for the first time, seeing Tim's face for the first time. We've got that sort of real suspense when 004 is climbing up the cliff. Obviously, he sees the note, Smiat Spionum, rope gets cut, he falls, you hear the scream, and you get the whip round of Bond's face when he's wearing that kick-ass outfit, that sort of, the whole parachute black with I love those metal sort of rings on the shoulders and stuff like that. He looks so good in this scene. And what an intro for Bond. For me, such a cool moment, that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've said it before a million times. When you introduce a new Bond, you need to go through a sequence in the pre-titles where you don't see his face right away. You need to see over-the-shoulder shots, whether it's Connery at the casino table in Dr. No, whether it's, Lazenby driving along the coast in Majesties, whether it's, Pierce running along the top of the dam in Goldeneye. You need to have that moment, and you get it in spades in the Living Daylights. I'm so glad that they held that back for that reveal moment. That you get the silent skydive, the sort of halo jump thing. You see all that kind of stuff in the sneaky Bond, and then the moment that Bond realizes something else is going on here. This isn't just an exercise anymore. That's when he rips around, and then shit's about to go down. And yeah, I love it, man. What a moment. What an introduction to a new Bond.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Superb. Okay, so on to the second coolest moment, or at least one of them. I really like the sniper scene. So Bond, okay, so he's in his dinner jacket, he's in his bow tie. We've got Saunders, who is a real Jobsworth by the book. You know, he has a go at Bond. And as soon as Bond gets into that sort of shop across the street, he is in total control. I love the bit where he goes up the stairs, turn off the lights, how amateur are you? You've got your light, the light on. They obviously can see us. Then he's got that brilliant bit with the dinner jacket. He can fold over the top bit so it hides all his white shirt and stuff. He's got that massive glove and the big, massive Walther rifle.
I'll tell you what else he's got. He's got that fucking wolfy face. He's got that face in the wolf. Scene, man. He looks like he's on the hunt. He's on the prowl. He smells blood. He's going out for what he's after. Yeah, you've nailed it, man. You've hit the nail on the head there. That is what I call dangerous Bond. That's the Bond I'm scared of.
That's Bond doing his job. That's Fleming Bond, isn't it? Right there.
In it. And if you remember when we went back to review Living Daylights and we compared it to the short story, didn't we? We kind of read through it, and that whole sequence obviously is the short story. He's there, he's waiting for the defection in the book, and he's basically sort of camping out in this little 1-bedroom flat, and it's the story of him hanging out over several days when this dude is going to make his defection across the street. And you've got the sniper across the street, and that whole story kind of plays out in a very, very similar way. And to see that done on the screen is a beautiful thing. I remember when I read Lord of the Rings as a kid, and then when I saw the Fellowship of the Ring on the screen for the first time, there were some scenes there that I imagined in my head exactly as they appeared on screen. I'd imagined it when I read it in the book, and it was as I'd pictured it in my brain was exactly what I saw on screen. And I feel like you couldn't do this scene any better to transfer it from the book to the screen. Do you know what I mean? In terms of that short story and seeing it up there. I think they did a bang up job with that, and just seeing the danger that just comes out of Timothy in that moment is great. I love it.
It totally is. And again, like moving on to the next cool moment, which is just afterwards, is you get that payoff. So Bond, basically Saunders has thought he's in control. We've seen Bond sort of take over, not following the orders. He didn't sort of kill Cara. He just sort of shot the gun out of her hand. Saunders is like raging. And then they go outside, and obviously Koskov is in the boot. And then Bond is just brilliant how he just turns things around. He's like, first place they look, get in the front, Koskov, and basically tells Saunders, Saunders has had a right go at him. He doesn't want to tell him about the plan and all this sort of stuff. We know the line, don't we? And then Bond just pays it back to him. And at that moment, the whole audience is cheering for Bond so much because, like we said before, no one likes a Jobsworth. No. Saunders as like sort of, he was just being a bit of an idiot to him earlier, wasn't he? And the payback that Bond gets him, everyone is like, yeah, get in, Bond. Come on, we want some of that.
Well, that's the beautiful thing, isn't it? Because the moment we meet Saunders for the first time, he's being a dick, isn't he? You're late, and all that stuff. And it's just, there's no need for that, Saunders. Do you know what I mean? Just chill out. Let it happen. It's going to be fine. And he's just a Jobsworth at every step of it. Section 26, paragraph 5. And he's such a smarmy little git. It's so nice. It's such a lovely payoff when Bond gives it to him through the window. And I love the way Saunders is just left there holding a baby in the alleyway. Sirens going off. Goons running around trying to find Koskov. And there he is stood there with the sniper rifle like, what do I do with this? You know what I mean? It's such a beautiful moment. Lovely stuff. I love it.
Definitely. Cool. Okay, so on to another one. Now, this could be possibly the scene that Bond is the most professional and possibly the most Fleming-like scene that we ever see of Bond. Yeah. This is when he's basically holding Pushkin at gunpoint. Now, we mentioned it obviously in the review. We mentioned it briefly in the last podcast as well. But this is where obviously he goes to the hotel room. He's just so good in this scene, Tim, and the what Bond does as well. He's in total control. Like Pushkin straight away knows that news isn't good, but that whole bit about if I trusted Koskov, we wouldn't be talking. I.e., I would have killed you by now. It is perfect. I think this scene is absolutely perfect, and it's so Fleming, and like Tim does it so well, and obviously John Rhys Davies is brilliant as Pushkin as well. And I think that moment, you can't take your eyes off the screen. It is so brilliantly done.
It's that thing, isn't it? It's like you've got Bond as an executioner, basically, an assassin. He's been sent there to do a job. But as we know previously, he's not that convinced the person he's been sent to kill deserves it. But, you know, he's going to do it. If anybody has to do it, he's going to do it, kind of thing. And there's that line. It's like Sir Roger said when we interviewed him, and he was saying that there was that line where he said Bond didn't enjoy killing, and that was how Roger took his interpretation of Bond forward. And I feel like you get that feeling with this sequence in the sense that, you know, Bond doesn't want to do it, but he's gonna do it if he has to, you know what I mean? And that's quite an interesting thing to see, that sort of, you know, that back and forth, that conflict within him. And I think you do that, like somebody like Timmy does that very well, where it's just like a facial expression, a mannerism that he gets across, that he doesn't want to, he's uncomfortable with it, but, you know, if he has to do it, he's got to do it, you know?
Totally.
I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. So I was trying to think of like the coolest moment in sort of the later part of the film. And it's a bit harder, I think, because he's just so obviously cool in the sort of earlier scenes. But there, I guess I do like the part where he kind of, he puts on sort of clothes, you know, Cameron Shah lends him some clothes, they're riding the horses, and he takes the bomb on board, so he sneaks on board the truck while Necros comes on, and he's sort of doing the little timer on it. And okay, maybe not, it's not a cool moment, but I still think it is a decent moment of Bond being a bit sneaky, but still, I always think to myself, you know, Necros only has to turn around and like, you know, he's in a real sketchy situation, but he's still putting himself in that situation because he has to, sort of thing. Yeah. So you got a lot of respect for Bond there.
That is one of my favourite things about the concept of sneaky Bond, is the tension involved in something like that. There's something, you know, I suppose a good example of this would be Gumbold's safe in Majesty's. You see Gumbold off out for his lunch break, wherever he's going, he's off, and you see him walking down the street. You see him, forgotten something. And then you're like, oh shit, is he going to turn around? Oh no, I've got it. And then he carries on walking. And all that time, Bond's up in the office, cool as a cucumber, having a little look at Playboy, waiting for the safecracker and all that kind of stuff. But then obviously the tension comes back in, where Gumbolt's on his way back in, he's coming up the stairs and blah, 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 coming out the lift. And it's just like getting closer to that point of, oh my God. And then there's just that moment of release where you're like, he made it. You know what I mean?
Just in time.
And I feel like anytime you get Sneaky Bond, there is always that element, because it's not like, here's me, Rambo, stood in the middle of the desert with 1,000 Russian soldiers looking at me in a bazooka. It's one man versus many. Do you know what I mean? And whenever the odds are out of your favor like that, it makes the tension that much higher. And I applaud Sneaky Bond whenever it happens. This is a good example.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, there's before we go on to License to Kill, there's one scene which one of the listeners has kind of mentioned several times, which we haven't sort of aired about in the Living Daylights. Now, this is the scene with Bond and M and Freddie Gray at the Bladen Safe House. Now, apparently, Timmy D has a bit of a leg wiggle going on here. Have you ever noticed that before?
A leg wiggle at the Bladen Safe House?
So there's a bit where his leg is going up and down. So you know when he's meeting with M and when he goes back and Koskov is there. Yeah, apparently Timmy D has a bit of a leg wiggle going on. So this is something that I don't know. I don't even know if I'd noticed it before, but it's something that I think we should check out. Apparently it's very, very strange. Like almost as if, you know, sometimes when you sit down and your knees going up and down and you don't know why, but it just is. And apparently Bond's got a bit of that going on. So maybe that's something we'll have to check out. I've never noticed it.
I tell you what, man, actually, recently, last week, I made speaking of leg wiggles, I'm going to take us off topic for a moment somewhat. I went to Berlin to visit a friend for a couple of days, had a lovely time, had an explore.
Saw your Octopussy picture,
absolutely, I
took
you an Octopussy photo. Did loads of World War II stuff. Went to see where Hitler's bunker was and all this fascinating stuff. And I also paid a visit to the German Spy Museum, which is right there. Obviously, there's quite a lot of Bond-related material there. And they have a gun barrel basically painted on the wall with the spot cut out, and you can stop and have your photo and all the rest of it. So I got the missus. Listen, I've got something I need to do. Here's my phone. You know what I've got to do, right? Yeah. And it is surprisingly difficult to pull off a gun barrel. I haven't posted the picture. Are you
including the walk? Is it a still shot or a video?
Well, I did a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
It's surprisingly difficult to pull off, because obviously talking about a leg wobble, when you look at Connery's gun barrel from Thunderball, he's definitely got a leg wobble going on, and I very much felt that.
Yeah, in all of them.
And I tell you what else it is, when you try and strike a Bondian pose, it's quite difficult to look masculine when you do it. Right?
Were you laughing?
Well,
at the time, or
a little bit. I took it a little bit seriously at the same time. But you do the turn and point. You've got the left hand out a little bit. You've got the gun hand. You've got your legs in a sort of slight squat. And I got the missus take sort of 5 or 6 shots, and I come back and I was like, I don't really look that good. It has to be said. I look a bit effeminate. You know what I mean? It was difficult.
You know what it is?
Go on, what is it?
It's you're not wearing your DJ or your suit. I think if you were rocking one of those two, it might have added to it.
Maybe.
What do you think?
Maybe. I don't know. But it's surprisingly tough, man. We'll have to do a little experiment next time we see each other and see if we can pull it off. But anyway, I went off on a tangent there with the wobbly leg comment. But I feel for Connery, man.
Oh, I'm going to see these photos. You're going to have to send them on.
But no, it makes me have all the more respect for Pierce for pulling off such a blinding gun barrel turn and shoot, because he absolutely knocked it out of the park.
He nailed it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right, so we've got to look out for Timmy's wobbly leg in the safe house, Bladen safe house. Next up, then, License to Kill. We've got what would be one of my favourite examples of the sneaky Bond, which is obviously Bond in his wetsuit with his dagger, sneaking around the wave crest, looking like a badass. How do you feel about this?
Total badass in the scene. This is definitely the coolest he looks in License to Kill. He's got his hair is not as bad because it's wet, so it's pushed back a little bit, but he's got the blade, and I love the fact that he's just all in black. Obviously he's got the wetsuit on or whatever, but it just looks so good. You've got the shine off the blade contrasting with the all black sort of thing that he's wearing on his hair. And he, like we always mention the eyes, but the eyes and just how he's creeping through. There's that part where two of the sort of guards or whatever are by, and he hears them and he just sort of stops, and it's just classic sneaky stuff going on, and the nice music cue over it as well, so get a good bit of tension going. And I think he's just looks so cool in this scene.
There's that deadliness to when he's in her bedroom, and then the door knocks, and Milton Crest is at the door, and he just points the dagger into just the back of her neck there, like just one little shunt, and it would have gone straight into her brain. It's just that real nasty dark side of Bond that you don't see. And also
often. when he first sees her, he puts his hand over her mouth and is like, "Make a sound," and you're dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's a really powerful line, the way that he delivers it, isn't it?
Yeah,
such a good line.
Big time. I love that.
So I
think that is how the Timmy looks the best in this film, in this sequence. Like we said before, they don't dress him particularly well in this one. We've got the legendary Barnett from later on, but this sequence, he looks the dog's bollocks as far as I'm concerned.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally does. So the next one then, we've got a bit more sneaky. This is Bond sneaking onto the roof of the casino and abseiling down. So it starts off with him and Pam, basically him telling her, I prefer to work alone, picks up the old tray and a little... not flannel, what do you call it? A waiter's cloth or whatever.
Yeah.
And basically, he goes into the lift, and we see him get onto the lift roof, goes onto the sort of roof of the casino. And I love the fact he's got that sort of repelling cord from his cummerbund, and he's got the gloves as well. He gets the gloves on and does a little abseiling outside before he puts on the dentonite plastic explosive and all that. You get a little boob cuppage as he's abseiling down as well, and a bit of John Glenn with the doves flying out, and the pigeons flying out, and just a really cool scene. This,
I tell you what, I love how when Bond kind of like is seamless with what he's doing something he shouldn't be doing. He's somewhere where he shouldn't be, but he just waltzes in, blends in with the waiters, picks up the tray, as you say, walks into that lift. It's almost like one flowing movement. It's almost like the Spectre pre-title sequence. One flowing movement. He's up through the top of the lift. He's out. He's on the roof, and he's in position. And I love the little bit of cheekiness with the boob on the statue. That's just the night, like as dark as this film is, and some would say quite humorless in relation to a lot of the other ones. That's just a nice little smirking wink to just remind you that this is James Bond we're dealing with here. You know what I mean? He might be pissed off in this film. He might not be jovial like he used to be in Roger's days. But, we've got a little bit of cheekiness there. And I do like it.
You got to applaud that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so on to another cool moment in License to Kill. So this is not so long after that. It's when he's preparing the sort of sniper shot on Sanchez. So again, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's just him doing his job, like we're saying, sort of setting up the gun, getting into position. Again, he looks pretty, well, it doesn't look too bad apart from the hair in this scene. And it's just him on a mission. And he's got that sort of look where he's, nothing is going to stop him. Obviously, apart from a couple of ninjas, which he doesn't know about, but it's still a really cool setup there. And I think that's a really great little moment. That bit.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Good stuff.
Okay. So next up, we've got some honourable mentions for death scenes in both the films. Now, these are some cracking ones. So, okay, start with Daylights. We've got 004's rope being cut in Gibraltar with the big screen we mentioned before. The milkman being strangled by Necros, so good.
That's a lovely moment.
Yeah, you get the song playing, where has everybody gone, pulls him over the wall. And it's obviously, when you've been there as well, it's quite a nice little moment. You get the 2 exploding milk bottles at the Bladen safe house. Now, that's another Bond thing you just don't see in anything else, is it? That is classic Bond, like exploding milk bottles. Where have you sort of seen or heard of that?
Exactly, man. That is a very definite Bondian thing. That is. I feel like Necros is a little bit unsung in the sense that he does have that element to him of a classic Bond henchman. You know what I mean? But for some reason, he doesn't seem to be quite up there with an Odd Job or a Jaws or whatever. But love the exploding milk bottles, man.
Then obviously you got Saunders getting sliced in half. Now, we could have seen a bit more. We know there is that additional line. Someone call an ambulance. Better make that too. And we know there is that. And there was a chance that you might have seen a bit more of the body. I don't know if you needed it. Maybe if it was License to Kill, we would have seen more. But again, that whole idea with Necros and setting the timer and everything, I think is brilliant. Just after they'd been sort of, the respect for each other was there and they'd sort of become mates. So that was great. And then obviously Necros with the cut in the boot, Bond cutting the boot and him sort of falling while still holding onto the boot, which I think is pretty crazy, but also pretty cool as well.
That's a beautiful thing. Yeah, that's absolutely.
Okay, License to Kill, a few cool death scenes. We've got Crest in the air pressure chamber.
That terrified me when I was a kid, man. I had to close my eyes when I was a nipper and that bit came on. It was too much for me. Yeah, it's
pretty crazy now. I know it's a bit Live and Let Die, Kananga thing, but you get the inflatable bit, but it's when it bursts and you hear that sound of the blood and the skin sort of hitting the window. It's like, or whatever. I can't even, I don't know what that was. But you know what I mean? That sound after it's sort of exploded is great. And again, classic, you wouldn't find that anywhere else really. We've got Dario in the cocaine grinder, as we mentioned. Really horrible death. Gruesome. But he's a horrible person, so great way to go. Hello on the forklift truck. That one is a little bit sort of kind of almost done, it's got a little payoff. But
how do you feel about Timmy's quip?
I'm
Looks
not
like he hit a dead end.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Oh, that was so good. I'm not a huge fan of the line, but anyway, that's quite cool. And then I like, it's not a big thing, but Truman Lodge getting Uzi'd with, it's time to start cutting overhead.
I feel satisfied with that because Truman Lodge is annoying, man. I like to see annoying people, murdered savagely.
Nice, man, nice. Okay, so if we're going on to the climax now of the films and obviously the main villain's death, let's have a look at, so the Living Daylights, we've got the big climax, we've got the Afghans versus the Russians, we've got Kara getting involved, we've got the Jeeps with the machine guns, we've got Bond in the aeroplane with all the cargo and stuff like that. And so what do you think of this? It's the classic sort of big battle scene at the end. So what are your opinions on that then? I
like a big battle scene. I like the forces of goodies and baddies going at it in the background with Bond sort of like happening in that setting. That's nice. We've not seen that for a while. I would like to see it again. Absolutely. Like I say, I do like the showdown between Bond and Whittaker. I just think Whittaker isn't deadly enough to really raise for that showdown to feel right. I think the actual way it was executed is good. And I really like the sort of gun barrel Bond being outmatched with, outgunned, I should say. But yeah, for me, it's just the fact that it's Whittaker is a bit like, I want to see it. If it was maybe, what I want to see is I wish Whittaker was a bit more like Necros in his ways. Do you know what I mean? That kind of a character. Then I'd have felt some real peril, I think.
And what about Koskov being sent back to Russia in the diplomatic bag?
Well, he's still there, isn't he? That was the end of Koskov, isn't he? So interesting. I suppose Putin probably got hold of him, and that was the end of him.
That's a different way to do it, definitely. So that's Living Daylights. And obviously, climax we mentioned of License to Kill. We've got the tanker chase, absolutely brilliant. But you got that moment where Bond's crawling away from the wreckage. He's bloodied. His clothes are ripped. You know, he looks absolutely beaten and down. And we think Sanchez is out of it, like we've mentioned before. But then suddenly, poof, the machete's right next to his face. Yeah. And you're just like, fuck. Yeah. Okay, this is not good. And then Sanchez, you know, hauls him up to the rock, gets a machete. He's literally about to kill him. And then we get that brilliant moment. Don't you want to know why? And like, that is just such a, you know, it's genius sort of little ending.
Yeah, that's very Fleming as well. There's the story, one of the Fleming short stories. I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head now. Which I think it follows the Oberhauser story, where there's the where they stole the character for Octopussy's dad. The names I'm having a brain fart now, but everybody knows the one I mean. Where Bond goes there and he gives him the gun and he commits suicide or whatever. Yeah. There's something very Fleming about. Yeah, that's the one. There's something very Fleming-esque about that moment of "Don't you want to know why?" showing him the lighter and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I do, like we were talking about earlier. I love seeing an ending like this. We've never seen Bond like that before at this point. You know, beaten, bruised, bloodied, right there at death's door, and then showdown with Sanchez like that. What a beauty! If you had to vote the superior climax, would you say Daylights or Kill?
100% License to Kill. If you're talking, like, apart from the very end scene, but if you're talking in terms of the climatic action piece followed by the villain's death, without a doubt, License to Kill. It's formidable. That whole section really is.
I'll give you that.
Brilliant.
Good stuff.
So what about the actual final scene then? Okay, so this is the classic Bond and the lady. Okay, so he gets a lady, yes. So Daylights, this is where Kara's just done her performance. You got M, you got Gogol, you got Cameron Shah and his men. They all turn up. M says, unfortunately, unhappily Bond's away. Yeah. She goes to her room. And then obviously see the dinner set up and stuff like that. Yeah. Now, what's your opinion on that versus obviously the part in License to Kill where they're having the party, he flips over the wall into the pool and then brings Pam in with him?
I have to say the very final end part of License to Kill is a bit wet compared to, well, literally, because he's in a swimming pool. But, you know, from a film that's as dark as that, you don't need a winking fish. You don't need Felix being like, hey, James, I'm glad you got Sanchez. Isn't life wonderful? That's just, for me, the wrong tone to polish that film off with. I suppose you need to end on an up note, don't you, after what is quite a dark film?
Well, no, you don't really.
But I suppose not. But ultimately, I feel like, you know, if you want to send your people out on a high, you've got to give them, because I feel like with something like Majesty's, that's obviously a very dark ending and it's very unique. But typically with Bond, you go out being like, yeah, that was cool, man. So I guess I see where they were going with that. But for me, I think it just sort of cheapens it a little bit. With Living Daylights, I feel like that's a real sort of old school ending. It's the equivalent of being in the orange dinghy in the middle of the ocean. You know what I mean? There she is. She's all upset with the little key ring. And it's like, there he is. Wouldn't miss this performance. He's got his vodka martini. He's ready for her. You know, he's going to be enjoying the fruits of Kara's pleasures deeply. Soon after that, isn't he? God bless him.
So do you think, in your opinion, which Bond girl sort of suited Tim's Bond more, like in terms of Cara Mallovi or Pam Bouvier? In terms of like if Bond settled down, which one do you think he'd go for out of the two of them?
I would say I don't think any of them would work, to be honest. No. I don't think there's one like Pam Bouvier. I think she's too like that.
She's her own independent.
So much. That bit,
there is.
I don't think that would rub Bond up the wrong way. No. He'd be pissed off with her. Lupe, absolutely, God no.
No.
Cara, I think she's a bit too young in her sensibilities. I think Bond needs a woman. Maybe. You know, like we said, Roger and Octopussy. Evenly matched. That's a good solid relationship. Maybe Linda would be the answer, Chris. What about you?
Go. Yeah, no, I totally see where you're coming from. I think the Cara thing, there was a bit of that relationship on screen, but it was almost a bit too soon, when they're on the wheel and he's like, make it happen. And she's like, I'm just not sure. But yeah, maybe I don't think there's anyone that's as powerful as a sort of maybe Octopusy Roger, like you said. He's a bit more, had a bit more going on there. Okay, so there we are. That's pretty much License to Kill and The Living Daylights with Timmy D.
Lovely.
We're just going to go through a few films post-Bond. We mentioned last time about The Rocketeer, which I still haven't seen because a lot of people came on and said, it's amazing, really good fun. So that's something I will 100% view soon. He also did a few TV movies and series like Framed and Scarlet and Chuck, none of which I've seen. But I absolutely freaking adore Hot Fuzz. It is one of my favourite films. I think for me, it is a top 10 film for me. And I think his portrayal of Simon Skinner is so good. It's funny. He looks great. Still got that look in the eyes, and he plays it just so well. And yeah, are you a fan of Hot Fuzz?
I do. I thoroughly enjoy it. I think my vote for my favourite non-Bond Timmy has got to be The Rocketeer, man. I'm going to set you some homework, Chris, because you set me some homework. And when I visited you recently, we obviously had to watch Where Eagles Dare. You were like, you have to watch this film. So I'm going to set you some homework, which is you've got to watch The Rocketeer, because I think it's so up your street, man. Especially as an Indiana Jones fan. I
haven't seen it. I really can't believe I haven't seen it. I don't know why.
So up your street. I think you'd love it, man. Don't want to build it up too much, but it's got Timmy in, so there's an extra reason to watch it for sure.
100%. Right, I'll get on that. A couple of other things. He voiced Mr. Pricklepants, the hedgehog in Toy Story 3, which is
Very
good.
Nice.
And the only other post-License to Kill thing that I've seen him was Penny Dreadful, which has obviously had a load of the Bond sort of alumni with Rory Kinnear, Helen McCrory, Eva Green, and it was written by John Logan. And I found like the first series I really got into, the second series I wasn't as into, but Eva Green, if you want to get some decent scenes with her in it, I'd highly recommend watching.
I think that's a roundabout way of for letting the gentleman know there are some visual treats, visual treats that you may find very interesting. Hey, and I'm not, some of the ladies listeners might be into that as well, and all the power to you.
There are also some very handsome dudes in it as well, so something for everyone.
There you go.
Right. Yes. Okay, so final question then, Tommy.
Yes.
Tim Dalton, did he do a good job? What is your opinion on him? Do you think he was good as Bond? How does he rank? When do you think Tim was at his peak? Are you gutted that he didn't get to do a third? Should he have done a third? What are your thoughts on Timmy D?
I love Timmy D. I love him. As I've often said, out of all the Bonds, if I had to line them up and rank them, Timmy unfortunately does come in last position. But that is no disrespect to him, because he's still James Bond. If you said to me who's better, Timothy Dalton or Arnold Schwarzenegger, I would say Timothy Dalton, because he's James Bond. Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't James Bond, so he still wins over everybody else. I would say there are definitely some things he does extremely well, and I would say for the tone of these films, better than I could see anybody else doing them. That sniper sequence at the beginning of Living Daylights is a perfect example. Had this been Pierce's film, I can see Pierce doing that sequence, but I can't see it being as threatening and deadly with Pierce. Like, there's something about Timothy's eyes during that sequence that just makes me feel danger, and he does that very well. So yeah, I love a lot of things. That Loverman sequence in the pre-title sequence, that is the best pre-title sequence in the whole series as far as I'm concerned. So there's a lot of things he does very, very, very well. I think where it falls down is, for some reason, I don't want to be Tim's Bond. If I watch Roger, Sean, George, Pierce, Daniel, apart from when he's getting his bollocks whipped, I want to be those Bonds. Do you know what I mean? I want to be them, especially George for some reason. I really want to be George, apart from at the end. But yeah, for some reason, I just don't want to beat him. I just feel like there's a I think that ladies' man factor that is important for me as Bond is just not quite there for me. Like I need to believe when he walks into a casino and all the ladies turns around, I need to feel like they would totally want to bone him, and I don't really pick that up with Tim. And that's I think that's the key thing that puts him in that position for me, because for me personally, that is an important factor I need in my Bond. I need that lover man thing. And for me, the only time I really see that is in that pre-title sequence with Linda when he lands on the boat. He nails it there. He nails it there. But there's just not enough of that. Maybe it was the scripts.
Well, exactly. I was just going to say, maybe it was rather than Tim. It was how...
Maybe he just didn't get the chance to really do that thing. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, it just wasn't there in the material they were working with. What about you?
Just quickly following on from that, in which case are you gutted that we didn't get a third Timothy? Would you have liked to have seen a third Timothy?
The third film is the one where they typically come
Hong
into
Kong,
their own,
wasn't it?
It's it was Goldfinger with Sean, Spy with Roger, Skyfall obviously with Daniel. That's as great as Casino is. That was the Skyfall. The box office receipts on that went through the roof. So you've got to say it's the third time lucky with.
Although the world is not enough, maybe not. Pierce, that could be the
I've got some interesting thoughts on that one, which we'll discuss when we come to reviewing that film. But I know what you're saying. Nice. I agree with you with that for sure. So I feel like maybe that's what I'm missing. Maybe I needed that third movie to be like, oh right, now we're cooking. Do you know what I mean? So it's hard to say really, but it's a tricky one when for me. The one Bond film I would love to see in an alternate universe is George's Diamonds Are Forever. I'd watch that above all others by a country mile. I love GoldenEye so much that I'm so keen to get onto GoldenEye that I don't feel the need for that third Timmy. No. You know what I mean? Though we had time for it. We had 6 years to get the third Timmy. So it's not like it's one or the other. But of course I would like to see it, but it's not the one that lights my fire, What about you then?
Well, personally, I think it would have been interesting. I would have liked without a doubt, I would have liked a third film for Tim. I think he was too, George is known for only having one film, and that's fair enough. But I think Tim was too good to have only done two. I would have liked to have seen him do a third, basically. And I think it would have been interesting to see where they would have gone for it, because License to Kill was so dark and so gritty, and obviously it didn't fare that well sort of financially, box office and all that. How would they have changed it? Now, they couldn't make Tim too humorous because that wouldn't have worked. So I guess they would have had to maybe tone down the darkness a bit, but still keep it.
I said the same thing about Daniel Pre-Spectre. I was like, don't give him any jokes, because he's not, it doesn't feel right when he does the jokes and the quips, It's like, I still wince a little bit in some of those in Skyfall. I'm just like, it doesn't feel like it lands right for me. Spectre shows up, and all that swagger and all the like one-liners and stuff just landed perfectly for me. So maybe maybe it is the material, man. Maybe that was it. Those first two films, because at the end of the day, Daylights was written with Pierce in mind, wasn't it? He was the man for the job. Timmy swoops in at the last minute. So License to Kill was super dark. So maybe they just needed one extra try just to get the tone absolutely perfect for Timmy. Maybe that was the thing.
I think so.
And on that basis, I want to see it. Give me the Hong Kong and the talking robots or whatever it was.
Yeah, too. I mean, that would have been a weird one, to be honest, but it would have been quite cool. But I think for me, Tim, definitely glad he was a Bond, without a doubt. He brings a lot to the role. I do agree with you on the Loverman side of things. He's probably for me the least the person who I'd least expect every woman in the room to want to jump on top of. That's nothing against him, but that's just where it is. But I think in terms of his look with the eyes, in terms of his aggression, in terms of his anger, his rage, you wouldn't want to cross him. He's got that part down as well. I think, obviously Fleming, so close to Fleming, went back and read all the books and all that sort of thing. I think he's great. And in terms of his films, I think both Daylights and License to Kill are really solid entries. I think for me, like Daylights, particularly the first half and second half of License to Kill, I've said it before, but I think they are banging moments of Bond. In terms of his peak, it's kind of hard to say because he only did the two, but I would have loved to have seen a third one just to see, like maybe 93 bust out, or 92 even.
92,
something like that.
Give him an extra year.
Yeah, bust out Bond 17, I think it would have been at the time, and we would have seen. But obviously, alas, it wasn't to be.
Absolutely.
But there we go. Okay, so on to some 007 Bond facts for Timmy D.
Facts.
Flames, explosions, fire, Bond facts.
We haven't had that in a while, have we?
No. Okay, so Bond fact number 1. Dalton's father served in World War II as a special operations executive.
Ooh.
So there we go, part of the SOE. So now that is interesting, isn't
That
it?
is very interesting. The SOE is one of my favourite World War II related topics. There's a book I often talk about called Secret Agent. I think
Which
the
you
author's
got
name
me
is
to read as
David
well.
Stafford. Got you to read it, and
Yeah.
I know a couple of our listeners have got a copy as well. It's basically a collection of stories of missions from the Special Operations Executive during World War II. Absolutely highly recommend it. Get that book and read it if you like that kind of thing, because you will dig it.
Just to give you a little tidbit of it, they had fake rats, or maybe real but dead rats, but stuffed with a bomb that they're then put onto the enemy ships amongst the coal. So when they go to shovel the rat in with the coal into the fire, it blows up. I mean, there's so many clever things that they used to do, wasn't there? That book is
some of the
brilliant,
stuff that really got me going as well is like the radio operators who were in occupied France and stuff, and they'd put the aerial up and they'd start transmitting, and then there were these detector vans from the Nazis that were driving around, and they could kind of detect roughly where they are, and then they'd be in the ballpark, and then they'd have to look out for where the aerials were, and then they'd come bang down the door and stuff. So it was like that thing I was talking about earlier with the tension. It's like those moments where you're in there broadcasting secrets back to the UK. You had to do it quick, then break down the aerial and then run.
I know there's been a slightly off topic. I know there's been loads of sort of World War II films, and obviously some about the SOE in Britain. Have there been any that's like? I mean, I've seen. I'm sure Heroes of Telemark. There is a bit of that going on, and that's a cracking film. But imagine a modern, well, not a modern remake, but set in World War II, but made nowadays, but all around the SOE, and like really stuff, detailed into like some real tense operations that they had to go to. That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
If it wasn't a movie, I feel like there's a Netflix series in there as well. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally, like your Band of Brothers, but more related to sort of all their activities amazing, and like suspense and danger. You could really write a good show on that, couldn't you?
Certainly could.
Yeah. Okay. On to fun fact number 2. Tim left school in 1964 to enroll in RADA and tour with the National Youth Theatre. He did not complete his RADA studies, however, and he left the academy in 66 to join the Birmingham Repertoire Theatre. Okay, on to bomb fact number 3. In 1968, Tim made his film debut as Philip II of France in The Lion in Winter, opposite Peter O'Toole, Katharine Hepburn and Anthony Hopkins. In bomb fact number 4, Dalton was apparently approached regarding the role of Bond, or in the very least his consideration was discussed, both in 1969, when he considered himself too young for the role and did not want to follow in Connery's footsteps, and again in 1979 following Moonraker, which he also declined due to not favouring the direction the films were taking. Now, that alone is going to bring up a few messages, a few comments, I think, because some people, there were times where he was supposedly approached like 3 or 4 or 5 times, different times, and other people say no, he was never approached. It's all a load of hokum. It's just his name was bandied about. So there's got to have been a little bit of that there.
I feel like Charles Helfenstein. We discussed that with him, and if I remember correctly, his answer was he was a name that was thrown around, but he wasn't really officially approached. And I feel like the comment about him being too young, it wasn't like he was offered it and turned it down. It was more like when somebody asked him about it later, he was like, "Oh, I'd have been too young back then." That's my memory. I might be wrong, but I feel like that's what Charles Helfenstein said.
Okay, bomb fact number 5. In 1986, after Roger Moore's retirement from the role, Tim was approached to replace him, but obligations to the film Brenda star kept him from accepting the role. Pierce Brosnan was signed up to star, but his contract with Remington Steele was renewed at the last moment, by which time Tim had completed his commitments to Brenda star and could finally take on the role of 007.
See, I questioned that one a little bit as well. From what I remember of Helfenstein, it didn't quite go down like that.
See, that's an interesting one, isn't it? So was he replaced and initially, like, how far was he if he was initially approached before the whole Brenda Starr thing? And because we know Pierce was deep into it up until obviously Remington Steele. But that would be interesting to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
It will be. I'll have to go back and listen to our Living Daylights episode with Charles and revisit that.
Definitely. Okay, bomb fact number 6. Tim's third film, rumoured to be titled Property of a Lady, was due for a 1991 release, but its production was scuttled by corporate litigation involving Eon Danjak, the copyright holder of James Bond on Screen, and MGM UA, the financier and distributor of the series. In 1994, tired of waiting for a film that seemed would never happen, Dalton officially dropped the role of Bond, reopening the door for Pierce Brosnan. Now, 94, apparently, he dropped the role, okay? So 89, License to Kill was rate. That's 5 years waiting around when nothing happened. That's a long old time, isn't it? Now, if you think about Skyfall, if you think about Spectre and how long Daniel will have to wait. I mean, I know sort of the things are in motion now, so it's a bit different, isn't it? But 5 years not knowing quite what's going on.
Especially
that's a long
in those
time.
days as well.
Yeah.
You know, when it was typically every other year. You know, it's a bit of a different world these days. But you know, I feel like Danny will be like, 5 years, wicked, I'll put my feet up. Yeah.
Maybe. And finally, bomb fact number 7. In 2003, Tim played a parody of Bond named Damian Drake in the film Looney Tunes Back in Action, which
Very
is something
nice.
I haven't seen, so I'll like to check that one out as well, I think.
Absolutely. Good stuff. All right,
Cool.
then. That's old Timmy Boy put to bed. So, Chris, shall we revisit the listener trivia question of the day?
Yes, which is from Mr. Jeff Pollock.
24 illustrious movies. In only 7, the name of the movie has not been spoken in dialogue. What are those 7 movies?
Ooh, so there we go. That is a solid question, isn't it? Now, I remember you said you had at least one in mind. Is there any more that have crept in since we heard at the start of the show?
Well, I'm gonna break it down. I'm pretty safe to say that all bar one of the Brosnans say it. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The one that immediately leapt to mind was one where the title of the film is written down somewhere.
Yes, 100%. So that was definitely from Russia with Love. So that's definitely one of them. And I think that is the Pierce that you're referring to, Tomorrow Never Dies?
It certainly is.
Yes. Okay. So we got 2. How many did he say there were?
7.
7. Okay. So let's go through them then. Can you think of any other Connerys?
Goldfinger, he says it. Thunderbolt.
Yeah.
Operation Codename Thunderbolt. You only live twice. You only live twice, Mr. Bond.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely
On Her Majesty's
says it.
Secret Service.
Now they say Her Majesty's Secret Service in the film.
Ooh.
I think of 2 or 3 times, but they don't say On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So that's 3 of them.
All right.
So we got that.
Let's see.
Oh.
I'm curious to see if Mr. Pollock thinks that's one.
Yeah.
And
okay.
then we might
Diamonds
have
Are
gone-
Forever. Diamonds Are Forever isn't said either.
Diamond. No,
No,
I
so
I think you're right.
so
Live
that's
and
4.
Let Die.
Yeah. Live and Let. Yeah. Well, this is a trick one.
Go on.
Because you've got that singer in the bar who sings it.
Oh, good call.
So
yeah,
is that counted or not?
that's a good question. I'm going to say we count that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it
all
is
right.
in the film outside of the titles, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Man with the
Okay,
Golden
so-
Gun, definitely. The Man with the Golden Gun.
Golden Gun. Yeah.
The Spy Who Loved Me, it's
No,
not.
I don't think that one is.
Yeah.
So that's 5.
Moonraker, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. Fiore's Only, yeah.
For Your Eyes
Octopussy,
Only,
yeah.
Mr. Bond.
A View to a
Octopus.
Kill, yeah. What a view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that count,
I would have
though?
scared.
I suppose it does.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. I must have scared the living daylights out of her. Yeah.
Yeah.
License to Kill. Yeah.
The license
Goldeneye.
to kill
Yeah.
is revoked. Yes.
So Whatever Dies, we've already said
Yeah.
is a no. World's Not Enough, obviously, yes. Die Another Day, yes. Quantum of Solace. Now that is not mentioned.
No.
Quantum is mentioned, but not
No.
Quantum of Solace.
Casino obviously
And-
is. Casino Royale
yeah.
in Montenegro.
Yeah.
Quantum
do that with the other 2?
Skyfall is definitely mentioned.
Done.
Done. There it is. Spectre obviously mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have we got them?
I counted 6. So
Ooh.
maybe he's counting Live and Let Die as the 7th one, but I don't know. I wouldn't include that because it is said when in the singer in the bar. Personally, unless because Never Say Never Again is mentioned as well. So I don't know if he was considering that, but I don't know. Should we have a listen and see what it
Let's
says?
have a listen. Let's turn it over to Mr. Pollock and find out what the dealio is.
Hey guys, it's Jeff Pollock with the answer to that trivia question. So, 7 movies, only 7 movies. The name of the movie has not been spoken in dialogue. And if I've done this correctly, those movies are From Russia with Love, course, James writes that on a picture from Moneypenny. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Draco tells Bond that he wouldn't tell a member of Her Majesty's Secret Service, but he would tell his future son-in-law. Diamonds are forever, live and let die. They're not spoken either. Then we go all the way to Spy Who Loved Me. It's not spoken. Then you have about a 20-year hiatus, Tomorrow Never Dies. And then the next one where the title's not spoken is Quantum of Solace. And I think that's it. I hope I'm right. I'm going to sound like an idiot if I'm wrong, but that's it. Talk to you later, guys. Adios.
Well, what do you think about that?
So I think we were bang on. The only thing is the live and let die. Should it be counted or not? I'm in the ballpark that I think it should, just because I know it's not like in a dialogue scene, but it's still within the film, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's still mentioned in part of the song. So although it's not mentioned by Bond or Kananga or anything like that, I still think it should be counted. So I would go with 6. I don't know. Is that being a bit picky? Or
it's
what?
like me with the tuxedo question the other week, isn't it? I would say I'm going to allow both of those to slide. I would say if you want to say it's 6, then it's 6, and if you want to say it's 7, then it's 7. 007. It's a nice round number, isn't it?
There we go.
There we go. Good stuff. Nice one, Jeff. Good to hear from you, buddy. Jeff was obviously on one of our birthday episodes, wasn't he? In recent years, absolutely. Good stuff. I tell you what, though, Chris, you know what time it is now, don't you?
It's time for
Guess the Quote Round.
Bond, James Bond.
Absolutely. It's time for me to re-perform my quote from last time. I get an inkling that you'll probably get this one, I think. And I'm interested to know how many JBR listeners also got this one. But shall I perform it for you again, Chris?
Oh, yes, please.
All right,
let's play it again, Sam.
The Prime Minister has asked the Home Secretary to come and represent him here today.
I love your posh voice, man. When you put on the posh voice, it's so good. Okay, for me, I mean, that is Thunderball meeting scene all over. Now, initially, the character I think it is, I'll say in a minute. No, when I say it now, I think it has to be M, doesn't it? Because I know there are 2 or 3 people in that sort of scene that sort of have talking roles, but I think it must have been M who introduced that one.
Absolutely. It was indeed.
Yes.
And I nearly dropped a clue last time without realising it, and I stopped myself.
What were you going to say?
About to say, I used the same voice for M as I did on those Spy Love Me episodes. But luckily I caught myself. But yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. My M voice is just a little bit posher and a little bit of grittiness in there. Yeah. There's my M voice. Which
a little bit more aggressive.
Personally, if you don't mind my saying, I think that's a better performance than Edward Fox's "Do Come Along, Bond." You know what I mean? What do you think? Do you rate me higher than Edward Fox?
You can do both, man. It depends on the mood, doesn't it?
I suppose.
But yeah, I think I probably do, actually. Yeah.
Thanks,
you're
man.
a shoe-in for the next one once
Rafe
has gone.
Once I got a few more greys.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so my quote for you this week, I think is a beauty, and I think you will get it immediately, but I thought I'd say it anyway. So my quote for this week is, "Not a word of protest."
Yes, very nice.
You got
All
it?
right, good stuff. Excellent performance as well, man. Do you want to give it to the listeners one more time?
Well, one more time? Okay, here it is. "Not a word of protest."
Very nice. I like it.
Okay.
All right, good stuff.
Sweet.
So we had a listener quote last time from one Mr. James Drennan, didn't we? Should we have a little listen to that bad boy?
Yeah, let's play it.
Copy from Makarov, 59, standard issue.
All right. I'm pretty confident with that one, Chris. How are you feeling?
I think you should lead on it. And I think if he had said 2 more words after his little quote there, I think that would have given the game away. Obviously, he didn't give us those 2 extra little words. So you go on, you lead the way on this one, Tom. What are you thinking?
Is it Spectre on the train with Madeline? He gets the gun out to teach her how to use it. She already knows, and that's it.
You know what? I think you are incredibly close.
Is it Quantum of Solace when he gives it to Olga?
I would say you're still incredibly close. Shit. And it's the same sort of scene. If I'm right, this is the exact same scene of Bond talking about a gun to a female. Who can you think of another one? Think about the Pierce years. Which of the female Bond girls might have had a gun? If James had said the two words following his little quote, it would have given the game away.
Give it to me. What are you thinking?
If the two extra words would have been standard issue Chinese Army, what would you have said?
That would, of course, be Tomorrow Never Dies, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I think that's where it's from. I think that's where it's from.
All right, cool. Okay, wicked. Shall we turn it over to James then and see what the dealio is?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hello there, Tom and Chris. It's James here from Station New Ulster, calling back with the answer to the listener quote from last time, which was, of course, Pierce Brosnan, Tomorrow Never Dies, in the bicycle shop after the dispatch General Chang's bodies, and a Bond grabs the Makarov, a copy of the Makarov off one of the dispatched goons. Right, that'll do. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Very nice. You got it, Chris. Well done.
Nice.
Does Daniel, Inspector, does Daniel quote that gun? Isn't it that, a Makarov or something?
I can't remember if he actually says the name of the gun or not. I think it's a different sort of gun, definitely.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's a definitely a different sort of gun. I can't remember if he quotes it or not, but it's that, you had that feel. You knew it was that sort of scene.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Going back, we've now listed 3 sort of similar-ish scenes where he's with a girl who's with, who has a gun and stuff like that. It was quite interesting.
Very nice.
Okay, so we have a new JBR listener quote for this week, and it is Brian from California. Should we have a listen?
Let's do it.
Hi, this is Brian from sunny California, USA, and I'm calling in with a quote I'd like to submit to you guys to try to stump you. I hope it hasn't been done before, but here it goes. Once again, the quote is,
Okay. What are you thinking about that one?
That's putting a big smile on my face because I think I know what it is. And if it is, then it is such a good delivery. It's perfect.
Yeah, I would say there are several. There's definitely one that sits on the top of the tree, but there's a couple of possibilities there.
That is true.
It's a good one. Excellent work from Brian there. Excellent performance. Good stuff. So, Chris, I'm not sure if you're aware, but it is time for...
Who wrote the song for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt? Now is she died? Who wants to stop while the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
Now, can we just have a moment just to celebrate Dan Gale there for a minute? Because that theme tune puts a smile on my face every time I hear it. It's a beautiful thing. And do you remember a little while ago, he sent us a new version of Tommy Trivia where he rewrote the lyrics because he wasn't happy with the lyrics in this version that we use. But there's something charming about this original version that just far surpasses the newer version. And it's a wonderful part of the show that always brings a smile to my face.
And I can't help but have a little jig as well, a little shoulder sway and everything when I hear it. It's
absolutely
superb. So it is, of course, Tommy Trivia, where I go through the list of Trivia Pursuit Bond questions for Tommy. So today we're going to start with gadgets and weapons. Are you ready, Tom?
I was born ready, my friend.
Okay. Can you name what 4 items join together to make the golden gun?
Oh, this came up recently, didn't it? I remember this came up I think it might have been the Christmas quiz last year, and I struggled with it. So it's a pen.
Yeah.
It's a lighter.
Yeah.
It's a cigarette case. Did you say 4 items?
Yeah, so one more,
Is it a cufflink?
Yes.
Nice.
That makes a trigger. Well done. Excellent stuff.
Nice.
Boom. Okay, on to locations. Question 2. General Medrano is the deposed dictator of which country?
Bolivia. No.
Yes, it
is.
Is
it Bolivia?
Indeed.
It is.
Cool.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Bolivia. Yeah. Superb.
The blank expression you gave me worried me for a second. I thought I'd screwed it up.
No, not at all. Okay, so on to question 3. Can you tell me who sang the title song, please?
Yes, that would be Shirley Bassey.
Oh, no. Closer. It is for Tomorrow Never Dies.
That would be Sheryl Crow.
It would indeed. Superb. You're halfway there and you've got full marks so far. On to question 4. Which music star plays the Bull?
That is the Bull.
Yeah.
The Bull?
Yeah. Which music style plays the Bull? I'll give you a clue
it's
if you
somebody
need
I had
it.
a wee next to at
I think it
the
might
Spectre
be,
premiere,
yes.
which is, of course, Goldie.
Yes.
But I thought his name was Mr. Bullion.
Yeah, Mr. Bullion, and then they shorten it to the Bull.
Oh, okay.
Zukovsky kind of calls him that sometimes as
very
well.
nice.
Can you tell me what is Goldie's real name?
Absolutely not. No, I can't do that.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, neither could I was just
All right.
out of curiosity. Okay, on to question 5. What does Bond wager in his golf match with Goldfinger?
A bar of gold.
And can you tell me how much that bar of gold is worth?
Damn it, £100,000,
Less.
£50,000.
It's all right. It's not on the card.
Ah.
It's worth
£5,000. Now you told me that, I
Yes!
hear him saying it. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, this is for a clean sweep. Okay, Tommy, we're talking about vehicles now. Oh, I know the vehicles are sometimes tricky. What make and model of car is Fiona Volpe driving when she gives Bond a lift?
Oh, bollocks.
Come on, Tommy.
See, the problem is I'm not a traditional man. A traditional man, he knows all about football. He knows all about cars and stuff, things of that nature. And I'm not a traditional man in that sense. I'm not into either of those things in any big way. So outside of the grand scheme of things, if, I know it's a Lotus Esprit Turbo, I know it's an Aston Martin DB5, obviously, or on that level. But those little kind of, cars for other characters, I'm like, that just doesn't go into my brain. So I've got no idea.
If I said Bullet, would that help?
No.
Steve McQueen.
No, yeah, I know what you're saying. There's that famous car chase, isn't it? I don't know. Is it a Mustang or something?
Yes, sorry, Ford
nice.
Mustang.
Beautiful.
Yes, brilliant.
That was a lucky
guess. A different sort of Mustang, but it is a Ford Mustang. So
very
excellent,
nice.
superb,
Cool.
Clean sweep, man. Love it.
Good stuff. All right, Chris, it's time for the final game of the day before we call it a day. And that is, of course... It's the music cue. That's right, of course, it is time for Guess the Music Cue. Now, you had a lovely little musical quote for us last time. I should explain for any new listeners, obviously, this is the game we play where Chris gives us a little tiny snippet of Bond music, and we have to guess A, what film it's from, and B, what scene it's from as well. So should we have a little revisiting of last week's one?
Yeah, let's do that. And after we've listened to them both, I'm going to ask you a quick question about them all. But
right.
yeah, let's have a listen to the one from last week first.
Okay.
That
is an early Bond film.
It is.
It stars Sean Connery.
It certainly did, yeah.
I think it's probably Thunderball.
You are incredibly close. But it's not Thunderball.
I don't think it's You Only Live Twice. So it must be Goldfinger.
Unless
it is, of course, You Only Live Twice.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds a bit too, old school for You Only
I know
Live
what you mean.
Twice.
It's quite bombastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is quite Thunderball in its delivery, but there's a reason why, because something is happening on the screen, which is quite crazy at the time.
All right. Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, it's You Only Live Twice, Chris, is the answer to that.
But we also are asking for a scene.
Yeah, we are.
Any ideas? It's a pretty deadly scene, if that helps.
A pretty deadly scene. Does it involve piranhas?
It certainly does involve piranhas.
I would say it's the death of Helga Brand then.
Yes. Good. You
Very
had two
nice.
choices there and you got the right one.
Thanks,
Helga
man.
Brand it is, yeah.
Beautiful stuff.
Superb. Okay, so on to the new music cue this week. Now, this one, you're going to get the film immediately, but interesting to see if you have an idea about the scene or not.
All right, lovely.
You'll know this really well.
Let's do
Here
it.
we go. Man, how funky is that little riff? What do you think?
It is wonderful. I do like it. It's nice. I'm very confident I have that in the bag. It's one of my favourites. And nice little riff there. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right
Excellent.
then, Chris. So that about rounds out today's episode of James Bond Radio. Obviously, we've tucked up Timmy, put him into bed. We've celebrated him today, haven't we? And last week, obviously.
Certainly have.
So
Yeah.
I think there needs to be something we address, Chris, which is this Tom Cruise-shaped elephant that is in the room, which is obviously Mission Impossible Fallout, which both of us were very excited by and a little bit saddened by for various reasons at the same time. So I think it's time we go deep on Mission Impossible Fallout and look at the current climate of where Bond is. Obviously, we've got this Danny Boyle shenanigans going on this week, and how Mission Impossible Fallout kind of, basically, it's Mission Impossible Fallout versus Bond 25. That's what we're going to be talking about next time. What are you thinking? You excited?
Yeah, I am, because I know how we both felt after viewing it. Obviously, an emergency podcast we released a few days ago, we sort of mentioned it. And it's going to be interesting to see sort of what we come up with, I think, and what our thoughts are overall. Ultimately, we want Bond to kick ass, don't we? And we're going to see if we can work out a way how that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, so we will be back next week with Mission Impossible Fallout versus Bond 25. We will see you then. I tell you what, though, I mean, that's going to be fun. But the couple of episodes following that, I'm very excited about. It has to be said. I feel like Are we
going to drop any hints or not on those?
No, not at this stage. I think
definitely not now.
Not now, but I think we'll drop some hints a little bit closer to the time. But there you go. But they're good episodes. That's all I'm saying. Enough said.
They're going to be good.
Yeah,
definitely. Excellent stuff. Okay, so there we are. Timmy D, as we said, put to bed. We've got Pierce coming up in the future, which I know you're looking forward to with a bit of GoldenEye.
Yeah, baby. Big time.
So there we are.
Good stuff.
James Bond Radio will return next week.
Indeed it will. We'll see you then. Take it easy, everybody. Bye.
Bye.